Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Few Connect Live for a Thursday. It is 1 minute past 12, which means we're going to kick off in 1 or 2 minutes' time. A little bit of housekeeping for those that have joined and never joined. For those that have never joined us before. That is quite difficult to say. For those coming to us live on YouTube Live or Facebook Live today, you can see a bunch of people tuning in on both those platforms, which is awesome. We're getting a lot more people tuning in on those channels. So fantastic. Hello to everyone that's there. There's a chat facility within YouTube and within Facebook. Please feel free to use that chat facility. Now, I will make sure that we get your questions and comments to our guests. Do me a favor, hit the like button and the subscribe button on YouTube and the like button on Facebook. That helps us out immensely with all of our spreading the good word of what we do. If you are joining us on the Zoom call, there is a chat facility within Zoom. I can see a bunch of people chatting there already, which is fantastic. Please feel free to add any comments or questions if you would like. Your microphones are muted by default on Zoom, but we can unmute those and we can move forward. And your videos, please feel free to turn them on. Alex Tulio, thank God you're here. Thursday, 2 minutes past 12. We are officially on time. How are you? Unmute. There we go.
Cam, finally, you've got your dream. You've muted me, and I'm getting a thing on the screen saying you can't unmute because the host has muted you. But I'm back. I'm here. Hello,
welcome.
Everyone. Well, yes. Well, welcome to everyone. And as always, it's so great to see everyone here. And as Cam says, please do put your videos on. We love to see your beautiful faces because a big part of this is all about community and connection. As Cam said, welcome to our members and regulars. And of course, welcome to those of you who are just discovering Few and our amazing community for the first time. Judith, you just distracted me with the chat saying that Cam's muted you so you can't speak.
Judith, you are unmuted, Judith, please.
So for those of you...
silence me. You can't silence me.
Well, so for those of you who don't know us, Judith is our amazing founder of Financial Executive Women, otherwise known as Few. So welcome, Judith, as always. And my name's Alex Tulio. I'm the Executive Director, and Few is all about championing the positive progression of women in financial and professional services. So we welcome you all. And of course, the fantastic men in our community as well are such a big part of it as well. So we come to you live 3 days a week, and we have so much content and so much fun on this show. It's been 3 months now that we're doing this, and it very much does feel like a show now. And as I say every day, please do share this. In all seriousness, we started this, I think it was the first week of lockdown. We just wanted to step into this void, to be visible, to show leadership, and to keep these connections going. And 3 months on, we are incredibly privileged to be building an amazing and robust community with a lot of incredible people. So please do share this. The link is there. I'm sure Cam's just put it in the chat. Please do share it because this is a free service to all staff of our amazing corporate partners. So please do share. And even if you know someone who isn't an employee of our corporate partners, share it anyway. All comers welcome. And we really do. We have a lot of fun here, and we know we add a lot of value. Our corporate partners, as always, I say to you, thank you, because we couldn't do it without you. So what have we got coming up? Well, today we've got another amazing guest. How unsurprising that I would say that, but we do. So I'm going to introduce Anna in a moment. But so coming up next week, and here we are, it's Thursday again. I don't know where the weeks are going. And if you can believe, next week is the last week of June. So anyway, someone said to me today, she said, oh, yes, it's the 3,000 days of lockdown, and it does very much feel like that. So next week...
Wow, that's soul destroying. 3,000 days of lockdown.
Well, no, as in, you know, it's a bit of a riff on this time vortex that we feel ourselves in. It does feel like 3,000 days, but it hasn't been quite that long yet, Cam. But so next week we've got another amazing lineup of leaders. We've got Alex Wade, who is the CEO of AMP Australia. Now, Alex has said to me, he goes, you know what, let's talk about life, the universe and everything. And that's going to be a really great conversation, because I know a lot of you are really leaning into these honest and authentic and transparent conversations with these really amazing leaders who you normally don't get access to. So that's going to be fantastic. Now, Pascal, who's on Wednesday, has got this incredible business now, which is all about super rewards for women. So we're going to have an amazing chat with Pascal, and also I know she's got something special just for the Few community. And then, of course, we've got Licia Heath coming up on Thursday, who's the CEO of a for-profit organisation, Women in Election Australia. So it's all about the political landscape and getting more amazing women involved there. So another incredible lineup. And of course, our masterclass events. So we're bringing these to you every Friday. So this is an incredibly deep network of specialists and amazing presenters that we're bringing to our members. Members, remember that this is part of your membership. So please do either tune in live, or you can watch the replays in the member portal, and you just need to go to the website to register for these. But I know we've got you, Gordon, there. You're on tomorrow, and I know you've already got a heap of people who signed up for tomorrow's masterclass. Just give us a quick, short, sharp idea for those who haven't yet registered, what might be in store for them with your masterclass tomorrow.
Okay, awesome. Here we go. So we're going to wash your network. We're going to understand why it's important to wash your network and how often you should wash your network. We're going to look about how your network accelerates your growth. We're going to work out how you're going to hang out with high quality people like me. We're going to network with purpose, and we're going to make sure that every day counts. So there's a lot we're going to do about the network and how you're going to change your network. And you don't know this, Alex, but I've just worked out a way that I've just absolutely cleaned my calendar out. So anyone that's joined in tomorrow is going to have free access to my calendar for a post masterclass session as a one-on-one. That's for everyone, whoever joins.
Well, that's amazing. So do join tomorrow. It's a great masterclass with Gordon. So you can just... And Banfi the duck, yes. So join us tomorrow, and all you need to do, members, is to just register via the website, and I'm sure Cam will put a link in the chat as well. And then, of course, drumroll, Judith Beck, special tell-all interview the following Friday. Give us a bit of a sneak peek on that for those who don't know what's happening.
Well, it's going to be a very fun event. We've got, I think we've got quite a few people already booked in, don't we, Cam? And,
we have 157.
Oh, wow.
The internet actually died when we sent out the invite, Judith. You've achieved your life's dream. You've killed the internet. So 157 people have registered, unprecedented amount for any of our events, which is awesome.
Actually, it's quite funny because I've had several people email me directly and say, quite senior people in the industry, and say, I'm going to be there, but are you going to tell any stories about me? And I'm going, well, you just never know. What about the one when? So we're going to have a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it too, Judith. It's going to be lots of fun. So that's going to be amazing. So that's next Friday. And I know Cam has just put the special event link in the chat. So without further ado, it is, and sorry, you're right, Cam, I forgot. For those of you who aren't members yet, we do have fun here. We do have a lot on, and we're super passionate about building this network and this community. So if you aren't yet a Few member, why not? But if you're still on the edge and wondering what it's all about, we do want to invite you to experience this for yourself. So Judith and I do monthly group mentoring sessions with our members. These are confidential. They build an incredibly strong and robust peer group. We problem solve, we support each other. So that's an amazing group. So please do attend one of those on us as our guests. And I also do a monthly masterclass as well that I'd love you to come and just check it out and see what this is all about. So Cam, thanks for putting that link in there as well. So please do try us out if you're not yet part of this incredible community. So now, without further ado, I'd love to introduce today's guest, Anna Glynn. And Anna, it's so great to have you here. For those of you who don't yet know Anna, let me just read out Anna's bio, and then we'll get right into it. So Anna Glynn is a teacher of positive psychology and an expert on wellbeing. Anna's passion is to support people, teams and organisations to achieve their goals, drive positive change and maximise their potential. She loves to see clients become more engaged in their work, perform at their best, take control of their wellbeing and thrive, both personally and professionally. Right now, she's using the principles of positive psychology to help people deal with the challenges presented by the current pandemic. Prior to launching her own practice, Anna spent a decade working in the financial services industry, where she held a number of roles, including leading a national sales team. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce and a Bachelor of Arts, a professional certificate in positive psychology, and a Masters of Applied Positive Psychology. She's also accredited in mental health first aid, the strength profile diagnostic, and is a certified organisational coach. Anna, wow, welcome. Cam, you need to unmute Anna. You're just muting everyone now. You're drunk.
Thank you. Thanks, Cam. Yeah, I was a bit worried about that. You know, I had a bit of a pause before I was able to say good afternoon to everyone. And, you know, thanks so much for having me, Alex and Judith and Cam. You know, as you said, I've been a part of the financial services industry and also a member of FEW for so many years. So it is really exciting to be here today and talking with, you know, old colleagues that I can see on the line, and of course, the FEW members as well.
Well, it's great to have you here. So I think, as I always like to do, we get so many beautiful behind the scenes stories from our guests. So yeah, I know we've got the bio and your multiple accreditations and degrees and expertise, but give us a bit of the Anna Glynn story. So what's the journey been like for you to where you are now, and your passion for wellbeing and psychology?
Sure. Well, as I said, you know, a decade in the financial services industry and predominantly at one of the banks. I became a people leader many years ago, and probably like some of the people on the line, when suddenly you become in charge of, you know, driving the engagement and the motivation performance of employees, for me, that really struck a chord. And, you know, I suddenly went, well, how am I meant to do this? How am I actually meant to drive other human beings? Where's the manual? Which, you know, I found out one doesn't actually exist. So I sort of went down a path of, you know, studying and exploring, well, how could I lead my team? How could they actually be at their best? I looked at coaching, and then I sort of fell into this world of, you know, positive psychology. And from there, you know, I did that professional certificate, and then also decided, based on what I've learned and what I started applying with my own team, that there was real value in this space, and helping other leaders actually do the same. So I took the risk. I left the financial services industry, decided to do the master's degree last year. And, you know, at March this year, which was great timing, I've actually launched my own practice, where I'm trying to teach as many people as possible the principles of positive psychology, so, you know, they can perform at their best. But of course, we want our teams and our organizations to really thrive as well.
And I would imagine that all your own principles and your positivity were tested as you launched your new practice in the first week of a global pandemic and a lockdown.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, every day. You know, wellbeing is one of these journeys. It's not about, you know, always, sort of being bright and happy and Pollyanna-ish, but it is about having, you know, the tools to be able to overcome, you know, those stresses and the change and the uncertainty that's in the world. So certainly draw on a lot of the knowledge that I've gained over the years.
So look, it's a great segue. So can you give us a bit more about the defining what actually positive psychology is? Because I love how you've even talked there. You know, it's, you know, there's lots of, we think, oh God, is it being up all the time? Well, that kind of feels exhausting. And I love how you say it's not the Pollyanna-ish. But so what is positive psychology, and how can we start getting really practical about how we can start to integrate that from an organisational level with our staff or ourselves? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, great question, Alex. And, you know, pretty much the first time when I start talking about positive psychology, the question that I often get is, well, is there a negative psychology? And it isn't a negative psychology, but the psychology that most of us are used to hearing about is probably what I would call like BAU psychology. And really the easiest way for me to explain kind of the difference between the two is that, you know, BAU psychology is all about getting people from maybe -10 to a 0 or a 2 out of 10. And this is, you know, where we look at things like, you know, people that are suffering from mental illness or substance abuse or trauma. Positive psychology, on the other hand, is more about getting people from like a 2 or 3 out of 10 to an 8, 9, 10 out of 10. So they're actually thriving in their lives, both personally and professionally. So what happened many years ago is that psychology was actually meant to do 3 things. It was meant to cure mental illness. It was also meant to, help people thrive, and it was also meant to nurture high talent. But unfortunately, because of World War II and the devastation that happened to people after that, a lot of the resources and the studies and the money went into actually curing mental illness. So those other areas were actually neglected. So positive psychology is actually the study on, the positive qualities in life. So those things like engagement, performance, motivation, thriving, flourishing, and well-being, which of course are all those attributes that we know that organizations are after these days. So for me, there's a lot of catching up that organizations actually need to do in this space. In Australia, we're really fortunate that our education system has pretty much embraced these principles. So for people on the line that have children, your children will be learning these principles at school in both the private and public system. We also see lots of sporting clubs, embracing these principles. So for any, Tigers fans out there, Richmond Tigers, Collingwood fans or Western Bulldogs, we know a lot of their players talk about, some of these principles that have helped them actually perform. But the gap I see is, where organisations can try and adopt some more of these principles so they have thriving organisations and employees as well.
It's super interesting, isn't it? Because it's something that we are hearing more about. Like the conversation is definitely more happening on more levels, as you're saying, which is really great to see. I think as you're talking about, it's one thing to say positive psychology, and it's good to see, lots of organisations are trying to do a lot more around this, whether it's, a daily meditation or it's some mindfulness, so that's great to see. I think the thing that, as you're saying, we're still lagging a bit is really getting it ingrained into just how we do the day-to-day, and really having this well-being principle as just a core embedded part of how we work, not a special thing on the side or in response to a crisis. Because when you and I were chatting, and as always, as I say, it's so great because I get to speak to all these amazing guests before we end up on the live show. And you and I were chatting about not just about wellbeing, how it needs to be the number one priority, but I was really interested to hear you talk a bit more about, what we're now going into. So everyone's talking about, we've been in this phase, and we're coming out of that and going into the next phase. But we don't really know what that new reality looks like. And I thought your perspective was super interesting, because the focus has been a lot about, well, okay, so we're going back to offices and teams are coming back together or not, and people are feeling varying degrees of comfort with that. But when you and I were chatting, you were talking about, I think we're going to be surprised at just how depleted this last 3 or 4 months, whatever it's been, has actually made all of us, and what that ripple effect's going to be as we all start to return to work, that it's actually not just going to go back to how it was, which is probably a good thing also, but that there's going to be this whole other knock-on effect of what we've just gone through. So can you talk to us a bit about what you think organisations are going to see in this next phase?
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head there. I think earlier also you said, the 3,000 days of lockdown. I don't know, well, I'm pretty sure I speak on behalf of everyone else on the line where, we're all feeling like we're in a bit of Groundhog Day. We're just on sort of repeat. And you're right, pretty much the surveys and anecdotally, we know that people are feeling really depleted. They're fatigued from the amount of Zoom meetings they've had. They're probably tired from any of the distant learning they've had to do with children at home. They're still stressed about, so many of the uncertainties that there still are around, like our health, the economy, our jobs. So people aren't generally in a good place at the moment. And when we should be quite excited about, going back to the office and, entering this next stage, unfortunately, we're not. And organisations, plus ourselves, have a big responsibility to play in actually addressing those struggles. Because what we're predicting is that if they're not addressed, this is where we're going to start to see things like burnout happening over the next couple of months and towards the end of the year, which we know actually has impacts on the bottom line. So it really is almost like a ticking time bomb. So, we absolutely have to address the fact that people aren't feeling well. Or not feeling at their best right at this point. And I think it would be, a real shame for people, for organisations, just to think that people are going to come back, raring to go after what has potentially been, a traumatic episode in all of our lives. So one of the things I did want to do with the group today, just so you can start to gauge, well, where are you at from a wellbeing perspective, is start to look at, well, what is wellbeing, and how can you measure it, and how can you take a gauge on where you're at personally. So wellbeing, it's not just about, getting rid of sort of the negativities or preventing mental illness, but it is about having positive qualities in your life. So you need to have the two. And when we talk about positive qualities, it's not just sort of the yoga and the fruit and sleeping well. There's actually a whole lot more to it. And this is what the science is telling us. So there's things like, how much positivity is in our lives, how engaged are we? What are the relationships like in our life, in our personal and professional lives? Do we live lives full of meaning and purpose? And then there's the physical health and the mental health side. So for those on the line that are keen to, sort of take a bit of a gauge and let's have a bit of a pause, what I'd love to do is just ask 7 questions that look at each of these factors, so we can have a look at, well, where do we sit in terms of our own well-being right now? So for those on the line, what I'd love for you to do is grab a pen and paper, or use your notebooks if you've all gone paperless. And please please draw a diagram or an X and Y axis like what I've shown here, where you've got 7 points along the bottom and then a 0 to 10 up the side. And what I'm going to ask is 7 questions that relate to well-being. And if you can just plot where you are at over the graph, or alternatively, if you can't be bothered doing that, just write down scores on where you are. And at the end, we're going to add them all up and have a bit of a discussion on where you're currently sitting. So hopefully everyone's done that. So each of these questions that I'm going to ask is going to look at reflecting on how you felt over the past week generally. So the first question is, how often did you experience positive emotions like joy, interest, contentment, or happiness or love over the past week? And 0 would sort of be, you never. 5 is about half the time, and 10 is, all the time. So over the past week, how often did you experience positive emotions? The second question is, how often did you become so absorbed in what you were doing, so you felt like you were in the zone, that time just simply disappeared? So 0 would be never, 5 is half the time again, and 10 is always. The next question is, how satisfied did you feel with the personal and professional relationships that you had around you over the past week? So 0 would be completely dissatisfied, 5 would be somewhat satisfied, and 10 would be completely satisfied. So how satisfied were you with your professional and personal relationships? Next up is, to what extent do you feel like you were living in line with your purpose? So 0 is never, 5 is half the time, and 10 is always. So living a life of purpose and meaning. Next question is, how much of the time did you feel like you were making progress towards your goals? And think about, personal and professional goals here. So 0 is never, 5 is half the time, 10 is always. Next one is around, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the following comment? Physically, I felt fit, strong, and healthy over the past week. So 0 is you completely disagree with that comment, and 10 is you completely agree with that comment. And the last question is, how often did you feel stressed or anxious over the past week? So 0 being never, 5 half the time, and 10 is all the time. So hopefully you guys have sort of plotted that. Now, if you can, depending on where you've plotted yourself in the graph, just try and add up your scores. If you sort of answered 10 the whole time, you'll get a score out of 70. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion. So I'll just give you a brief moment to add those up. And also, if you've plotted yourself, you'll see if you're above or below the line as well. Oh, some people are sharing. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty, Nikki. All right, so let's have a look at those scores. So if you've scored somewhere between 0 and 17, we would probably say that you're someone that is struggling at the moment. And that's about, when we look at studies that have been done, that's about 7% of the population. So people that are really struggling. People that have scored between 17 and 35, they're people that, they're not feeling bad, but we would talk about them, they're just sort of getting by. They're just going through the motions of life. So they're not feeling awful, but they're not feeling great. Now, unfortunately, this is the area where we've seen people actually, or people join this cluster, and this is where the area has grown. So we've seen people go from about 36% to 45% here. The next group are those people between 35 and 52. And these are people that we would say are living well despite struggles. So they are doing quite well in their life, but they understand that there's stress and uncertainties, but they kind of know how to deal with those to some extent, or they know that they'll pass. And this is another big or large group of people, around the 34%. Thank you also for more people sharing your scores. And for that last group, for those people that score between 52 and 70, you're thriving, which is awesome. So, unfortunately, we've seen this group actually decrease in number, but for people that are sitting there, they know what they need to ensure that they are well and functioning well and feeling good as well. So thank you again for sharing. So based on those questions I asked, we looked at some of the areas that you might need to improve on. So for those that are looking at their scores and thinking, well, yeah, there was some areas where I didn't score as high as I would have liked to, I'll just recap exactly what we were talking about for each of those pillars, just so you're aware and you might be able to go and do some of your own research. So the first question was all around positive emotions and how much you experience in your life. The second question was all about engagement, which is really important to have in your work, as we know, but also in your personal life. The third question was all around relationships, which we know are so important to our well-being, which is why this period of lockdown has had such a big impact on our well-being, because we've been asked to physically distance ourselves from one another. The next question was all around, living life around meaning and purpose. So, making sure you've got a purpose. It might be connecting to your company's purpose as well. The next question was all around achievement. So do you set goals and do you strive towards them quite regularly? The next question was all around your physical health. So that was about, thinking about, your eating and your exercise and your sleeping. And then, of course, that last question around, stress and anxiousness is all around your mental health and where you're sitting from a mental wellbeing perspective. So if there were areas there that you think, oh yeah, that's probably where I didn't perform as well, they're just some opportunities for you to go and do some more research around, well, what are some of those things that I could be doing to help increase myself in that category. And Cam has a link as well to a full version of this survey, a bit like the disclaimers we see in PDS. Please do not take this as, the be all or end all. Usually these surveys, are sort of, 100 questions or so. So you can get a really good answer around, where you are sitting. But I just wanted to give you a bit of a taste of those things so you could understand, well, what are those components that drive your well-being? Thanks.
So interesting. Thanks, Anna, for doing that. And thanks, Cam. So that's the links in the chat. So they're very, I know that's just a really super quick snapshot. And yes, thank you for sharing, guys. And don't forget, ask questions. If you've got questions about it and you want to know more, this is your chance. But they're really thought-provoking, aren't they? And I think you touched on it before, and this is obviously, it's a theme of this show, because what we've got here is this incredible community. And we're all wearing multiple hats in life, but specifically from a business and a work perspective, where most of us are leaders. So we've got to look after ourselves, to your point just then, but also we're also thinking about others that we're leading and looking after. So, going back into all this, and I know, Gordon, you put a comment in there just before that we did the survey about, look, it's probably going to be until next year until we go back full capacity into an office. So Anna, with a leader hat on, how should we be starting to have more of these wellbeing conversations? How, with the leader hat, can we start to be more proactive especially when we've got these current challenges about interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you mentioned it there as well. The first step of leadership is knowing yourself. And I think at this point in time, what's particularly important is knowing where you're at in terms of your well-being and what you need as a leader to be at your best. So then, of course, you can help your team be at your best. So, absolutely recommend trying to do, some of those surveys to find out, well, where am I sitting and what do I need to do to actually improve my own well-being? But then what I think is really important as leaders going forward is that, we are able to have those conversations with our teams about where they're at and if they're struggling. And to do that effectively, we need to lead with, empathy and compassion. We saw so much of that during the pandemic where we saw, all these people come out and support their neighbours and the elderly and the vulnerable. So we need to bring more of that into the workplace and ensure that our leaders are, have the skills and the confidence to have those conversations. But of course, what we need to ensure that's evident is that psychological safety. So people need to feel safe to be, expressing their fears and their concerns. And the best way to do this, of course, is, for leaders to show some of that vulnerability as well. So I think, checking in on your own well-being, checking in the well-being of your team, having those open, honest conversations about, what can we do to try and ensure that we've got a well-functioning team going forward. Leaders also have this big issue now around how do you actually engage a team that is going to be remote. So we know a lot of organisations aren't returning to the office, even this year. But even if people start to come back, we're going to still have people that are working from home, and of course with flexible working hours and things like that. So we need to ensure that leaders are thinking about, well, how do you engage a virtual workforce? Because we don't want people to sort of disappear, behind the screens. We're losing things like those water cooler chats, which we know are so important, for things like engagement and productivity. So they really, leaders need to think about, reconnecting back to purpose, thinking about, well, what are all those ways we stayed connected whilst we were in lockdown, and how can we ensure that we're continuing those going forward as well?
And thanks, Nikki, for your question as well. I know you said, whoops, I just saw Gordon's question, but same but different, right? Because it is all about virtual recognition, virtual team building, content, and really leading the charge. So, Anna, I know, like, we're now talking like it's good. We've got some practical tips for ourselves, and this has been a recurring theme: is that we all have fallen prey, and it's unsurprising, to this whole thing of busyness, right? So it's that constant challenge. When there's more senior you get and the more responsibility you've got, you get pulled into this vortex of needing to do more. But we've got to look after our own, whether it's our own energy, mental health, well-being, resilience, physical, like all the things that you're touching on and that we've touched on already. So that's the first thing. So, and then we've talked as a leader some of the things practically that we can do. I know you also do a lot of work, thinking about from an organisational and a systems, like kind of lifting it up a bit, because I think we do have this opportunity to reshape the reality of what work looks like and organisationally. So talk to us a bit about, if we lift up to that sort of more that mega theme about where do you think the opportunity is so that we do have thriving workplaces and it's not just down to individual leaders to be trying to do the best they can for their teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a huge opportunity for organisations to actually drive positive change and actually, it's almost like you can draw a line in the sand and talk about, this new reality. Don't like talking about new normals. It's, the next phase can be a new reality for everyone. And I think one of the, the biggest opportunities that organisations have is actually learning from their people. So, having the conversations with their teams to say, okay, what is working really well? What did we see that worked well when we, were all actually, working from home? What are the things that we actually want to stop doing and leave behind, and let's leave them in the past? But what are some of those things that we saw that we actually want to take forward as well? Let's start to imagine, well, what could our workforce look like over the next year, 5 or 10 years? this really is the opportunity or opportune time to create that change. And I think, so often we go to consultants and things to give us that strategic direction, but really let's ask the people that, are living and breathing it, and let's go to our workers and have those conversations. It'd be such a missed opportunity for us to just go back to the way that things were, because I think, again, you said earlier that, things weren't going so well before, so why try and return back to that normal that we had? There will be organizations that say, we're so focused on just survival, like we can't even think about, sort of growth. But I think that now when it is uncomfortable, it is changing. This is the time when individuals change. And I think this is when, organizations as well can also try and change so that they can set themselves up so they can thrive in the future.
I would love to know from all of you, because as I said, we're all living in this from different angles and perspectives. What are the things that all of you go, God, I don't want to go back to that? And what are some of the things that you think, wow, this has actually been a bit of a silver lining or an unexpected gift that you want to take forward? And I'd love you to put that in your chat in the comments now, because I think it's such an important thing, isn't it, Anna? Because I know a lot of leaders that have come on already, on the show, CEOs of all sorts of institutions is actually saying, one of their biggest fears is that we slide back into the comfort zone, because it is kind of this well-worn track of, even though we know that we've been able to mobilize and do things remotely and thrown out all the, the misconceptions about flexible working and all these other things, that it will still be all too easy to go back to how it was, because that's the known quantity. And it's fascinating to me when I'm speaking to these CEOs and MDs that they're all kind of saying this is what's occupying their mind, is how do they capture some of the great stuff and not fall back into that old well-worn path. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I was going to say, what's the trick? It's not a trick, but what do you think? How do we do that as leaders? Because it's kind of hard to resist the pull of what's always been.
Yeah, and we know that, like, that's just human nature, right? We like to sit in the comfortable zone. We hate going outside the square, out into the uncomfortable area, but that is where we need to sit, because that is where growth and development occurs. So I think as we were talking about earlier, it is just so important that we think about, using this as an opportunity to drive that positive change. This is that burning platform we've been waiting for. So we need to use it. There's lots that can be done around, a company's purpose, thinking about, how you actually connect your employees to this. And, that might have changed somewhat for organizations during the pandemic. People have had to shift and pivot, for want of a better word. So that might have actually made them, re-look and redesign that purpose. So making sure that the employees have that connection to, not only, what and how that they're doing their jobs, but also that why they're doing their jobs, which we know is so important for motivation and performance. But thinking about opportunities as well, crafting, teams that are trusting, that, they are psychological safe. These, again, are all the things that we need for high performance. Using the strengths of, individuals, but also considering, what are the strengths of the team and the organization? And let's play to those, as opposed to focusing on sort of the weaknesses, because that's where we actually get, higher engagement, and again, can lead to, those bottom line outcomes. So they're just probably some of the things that, going forward, again, those learnings we've had from this period would be so good to see implemented as, sort of practices and policies in the future.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's so much to that. And it's this real, I keep saying it's this reflection and inflection point, I think, at all those levels. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So, as always, time goes so fast here.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last few minutes, so it'd be great to have a look at some of these comments, Anna, and let's get maybe some really practical things that I know you do, maybe in a masterclass for us. We'll talk about that in a second. But, it's interesting, isn't it? So you're talking about psychological safety is just one of those things. And thanks, Nikki, for sharing, that one of the things is the delays in getting things moving and decisions made has seemed to be more streamlined now and time efficient. But the point you make, which I think is so profound, is that there's trust that work still gets done. So I think, to your point, Anna, this trusting in your teams that they're actually, it's not about the hours they're working, but it's the output and the outcomes, I think, is super important. And then a lot of you are saying, you know what, I miss the water cooler chats. Like, I've heard that a lot. So what do you think that's about? Is it this incremental, the 30 seconds, hey, I've got you, I can bounce an idea off you? Like, what are we missing there? What is that about?
Yeah, I think there's a few things in that, and obviously it depends on the type of conversations that happen at these water coolers. But so often that can be those sorts of quick conversations are where some of the rich information gets shared. So it might be, oh, I spoke to this person, or I had this phone call, and they're doing X, Y, Z, and that can just be where you pick up some new information that you need to take forward that might not be something that's discussed at meetings and in that more formal situation. But of course, again, it's just having that conversation. Like, human beings love other people, particularly for extroverts. So extroverts need others for energy. So having that sort of the ability to talk to people whilst in the office, which we haven't been able to do. That's why a lot of people might have actually found they're being depleted as well. So this pandemic has actually been, such an interesting social experiment, because we've seen now I'm being very general here, but we've seen some of the introverts really sort of thrive during this. They're like, I'm at home, this is great, no one's around to distract me. Whereas extroverts are the ones that have really struggled and going, oh my gosh, I'm at home, I need others around me, to try and actually get myself elevated and to get those, good energetic feelings. I've found myself going to the cafe and just talking to the baristas, quite a lot, because, for me, I've really missed that in face-to-face engagement. So yeah, the water cooler chat can mean many things to different people, but now we need to think about, well, how do we replicate that in virtual environments? And it might be, utilising that technology that we've got in front of us to be able to do that.
There's so much there. So, as always, these things go so far. So I know, and a couple of things, I know you've got a webinar coming up next week as well. And I know that you're going to do a masterclass, a member masterclass for us as well, which is going to be awesome. So we're definitely going to bring you more information on that. And it'd be great also for all of you to tell us what you want to know, like what do you want to go deeper in around everything that's Anna's touching on as well, so that we can really craft something that's really great for you and really relevant, and has got heaps of practical stuff in there as well. And I love, Danielle, you said I try to do a virtual face-to-face morning tea with some colleagues every week. Yeah, so these sort of little things. But so how do we find out more about you, Anna, and your webinar next week, and how can we hope to engage with you more?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as Alex said, I do have a masterclass happening next week, which will delve more into some of the practicalities around how you can implement these, evidence-based practices, yourself, but then into your organisations and your team. So that's happening next Thursday at 1 o'clock, not to clash with this, the few seminar, of course. And of course, people can, connect in with me via LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or sign up to my blog, where I, regularly talk about these sorts of elements and these sorts of topics as well. So hopefully Cam will pop in the link to the event so people can register. And I'm also offering, a 2-for-1 at the moment. So if you register, please bring along a friend or a colleague or a family member who you think would benefit from this sort of conversation as well.
That's brilliant. And thanks also for reminding me as well. Link in and connect. We say this every time, and it's so important. I can see a few of you going, yes, Alex, I know you keep saying, but in all honesty, so many of you say I struggle to build my network. So this is an amazing community. Start to leverage and connect with this community. You've got the perfect icebreaker here. So link in with us all. Thank you so much, Anna, for another amazing session. And we certainly look forward to having you back as one of our special masterclass presenters. Thank you, everyone, for another wonderful week. Don't miss Gordon's masterclass tomorrow. That's going to be super great. You've got the links, and don't forget our special event next Friday as well. And I'll see you on Tuesday at 12 o'clock for Alex Wade, AMP Australia's CEO. So until then, have a beautiful day, a beautiful Friday, and a great weekend. See you Tuesday.
Thank you. Bye.